Welcome to the Capstone Conversation, the East Bay's best podcast. Hosted by Jared Asch, bringing you in-depth conversations with the leaders shaping your community.
Today, we're going to talk about life sciences and biomanufacturing here in the Bay. What does all of that mean? We go to a lot of economic conferences where people are talking about how do we attract advanced manufacturing, instrument manufacturing, biomedical to our cities as a wave of the next future jobs. What does all of that mean and how do we break that down? Today we are joined by
Gregory Theyel.
Gregory. Tell us a little bit about your background and your expertise in this space.
Thanks, Jared. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to talk about something I really care about, and that's the biomedical industry, particularly biomedical manufacturing. And my background is as a manufacturing engineer. And the way I was trained is that there's the need for a bridge between really awesome ideas and things that the public needs. And manufacturing is that bridge. And I've spent my whole career in different industries trying to help them make that bridge from really interesting, cool ideas to a product or a service that the public can use. And lots of my training occurred in the United Kingdom at the University of Cambridge and the Institute for Manufacturing in particular, where we really talked about manufacturing as a big M instead of a small m. And what I mean by that, many people thought about manufacturing as just a small m functional task. Oh, we do this and this, and yes, there's some manufacturing there, kind of like added in the equation with marketing and sales and those types of things. But instead, when you see manufacturing as a big M, it's actually a strategy to be able to manufacture, because then you're going directly from what the consumers tell you to making something that they want and position your company around that. In some ways, a very easy example that no one really talks about enough is Amazon. I mean, Amazon collects a ton of data so they can find out what people want, and then they make it and sell it to people and make the biggest margins, much bigger margins than when they just sell things on their platform.
So why should people listen today? Why is this important to the Bay Area?
Thank you. I think probably the most important reason that people should listen is because if you care about economic development, if you care about regional stability and economic long-term vision, biomedical and life science is in some ways the foundation or the steady part of your portfolio. Think about it as some of your blue chip stocks that, hey, I need that stability within my portfolio, and then I can take shots with other things like AI and social media and information technology type things. And what I mean by that is life science and biomedical is a long-term investment. So it's in facilities like good manufacturing practice facilities and clean rooms, and it's in well-trained employees who will have jobs and careers here that aren't changing rapidly. There's some real contrast between tech and life science or biotech. And the long-term bet, this kind of foundation, is in biotech. We love tech. No, don't get me wrong. Information technology and all the latest things really fuel our economy for the Bay Area. But the foundation has always been, I think, life science. And that's what makes us different than other regions when they go up and down with these waves of new information tech. Life science is that steady foundation.
When we're defining for the rest of this episode biomedical, life science, how should we view those terms that you're using?
Thanks, Jared. I should have jumped to that right away. And life science or biomedical is a big umbrella. And underneath that umbrella, there's what most people think about is biotech, which is taking living material and making something useful out of it, whether it's a drug or whether it's a material or a food. And that's definitely under the umbrella. There's pharmaceuticals, which is often the extension of biotech. It is taking that insight and knowledge and turning it into something, oftentimes a drug or something like that. But then there's also medical equipment and medical devices, often called medtech. And that could be anything from a stent inside that improves the circulation in your heart, or it could be a pacemaker, but it could also be a surgical robot. It could be an operating table, a new operating piece of technology, a new rehabilitation technology. Those are all under the medtech. And then some new areas, cell and gene therapies. Sometimes they fall under biotech, but I like to keep them under the big umbrella because they're a separate kind of new growth area. There's digital healthcare, which is everything from your Fitbit to your Apple to any type of electronic healthcare records. That's under there too. And genomics is another huge area as well. You see, the umbrella is pretty big. All of those I put under the umbrella of biomedical. It's bio, but it's also medical. It covers the spectrum.
From your vantage point, working across the biomedical manufacturing ecosystem, what is the current state of things here in California, but particularly in the Bay Area? Is this a sector that's growing? And why here again?
2022, 23, we hit a bit of a headwind on available capital, and including, or maybe initially, from the government. A lot of the companies, really early stage companies, rely on non-dilutive grants from the government. And when the current administration, federal administration, came in, they cut a lot of those programs, and then that scared a lot of the venture community. But we've bounced back from that. A lot of new growth because of AI, both AI from a drug development perspective, but also increased efficiency in how to run your company, especially on the manufacturing side, cell and gene therapies, personalized medicine, and even personalized medical devices. We've had a real rebound, and that rebound, or we'll call it a kind of a technology burst, has led to an investment burst. And 2020 and all of 2026, we've seen real robust investment climate, and that coupled up with the technology burst, things have been booming, actually. Bay Area in particular, California more generally, and for other reasons, and we'll get those in a bit, some of the reshoring that's happening, that's been helping other parts of the United States. Globally, this industry has been really supercharged since the pandemic, in large part because a lot of countries realized that they wanted to have a more robust life science or a biomedical industry. And globally, definitely the country, yes, to a lesser extent, but California and the Bay Area, absolutely. That's been the real leader in the world, continued to be the real leading location in the world. Now, you asked me why. Some of the reasons why is, and these are really important because lots of people come to me and say, I want to have an industry. And some of the reasons for such a robust both recovery and industry in the Bay Area, number one, it starts with research. It really does. And Stanford and UC Berkeley and UCSF, there's no better places in the world than those places for research and new ideas. On top of that, there's a culture in all three of those places for spinouts. It's partly informal, but it's also formal. There's a culture there where people look to spin out ideas from their research, and the universities have set up the infrastructure to make that easier. And that really triggers a lot of the growth. Number two, we're still the hub for funding. The venture capital that's here is about half the funding in the country, and a third of what's in the world is in the Bay Area. And we've got a lot of robust funding. We've got a workforce as well. That's important. I gave a talk in the UK recently, and one of the biggest kind of points of discussion was, how do you guys deal with failure? And I was like, we test hypotheses. It's no different than what we're taught as scientists, is that you test a hypothesis, and if it doesn't work, you try a new one. And it's the same thing with companies here. And they're like, wow, that is significantly different. In other parts of the world, to have a company fail is seen as a real scar on your reputation. Here, it's seen as you're just testing hypotheses and moving on. You're adding to not the collective understanding, but you're also moving your own agenda forward too. I think that the educational institutions, the spin-out culture that's in those institutions, the availability of capital, the availability of talent, and then this attitude about moving forward and advancing understanding. I think those 5 things are probably the most significant. There's a few others. One other one is a robust surrounding economy where AI is advancing and robotics advancing, all these other fields are advancing, and that's helping the life science or biomedical industry as well.
It sounds like there's a mix of 2 different Bay Area sub-economies, right? The AI side, the advanced robotics side, to the life science and biomedical, because they're merging, and the talent pool to merge them the VCs to merge them are here.
Absolutely, Jared. The phrase that everyone uses in the entrepreneurship space is use case. And AI is powerful, but always was seeking for a use case. And the interesting thing is that, just as you said, there's proximity between life science industry and biomedical industry and AI. And that proximity made it easy for them to find a use case. The reason the use case is so important for something like AI is that you need data. You need data to train the models so that they can make better decisions. And we have tremendous amounts of data on past efforts to find new drugs. We have outstanding data on manufacturing, designing and manufacturing new medical devices. And when you have really good data, then you've got a great use case for AI. And you're right, proximity matters. In such a footloose world we have, the proximity, the physical proximity really aided what you're talking about, this two things going on in the same region.
You're making a great case for the R&D to be done in the Bay Area as part of this. Why would the manufacturing be done here versus Ohio or China, parts of Africa, where things are historically cheaper to manufacture?
Part of this answer is the what. Cell and gene therapies, for example, are individualized. I take cellular tissue from you, cellular tissue from you, I translate it, I transfer it, I improve it, I enhance it, I put it back in your arm. There's an importance of spatiality there that makes it more efficient and actually makes it possible. And having that processing, that middle step of taking it out of your arm, processing it, and then putting it back in you, having it close by makes the whole operation possible, number one, but more effective as well, especially long-term. What we've done is we've disaggregated manufacturing. It's not that case with cell and gene therapies. And so now we've got a need for a local disaggregated manufacturing system. That's number one. Number two, there has always been a feedback loop that has been essential within the whole product development space. And what that means, Jared, is that we do the research, we see if we can make it. We run into problems, go back to our researchers, back and forth. And the more high tech you are, the more advancing technology you are, the more important that feedback loop is. When I was trained as an engineer, we were in this, I was at the very end of this stage, but there was this kind of in the 1990s and early 2000s, there was this whole thing about the small M that I talked about. Let's take manufacturing and send it to a low-cost location someplace else in the world. And what it did was it ruptured that innovation cycle that I just talked about. And then suddenly, partly through because of the financial crisis in 2009, 2010, partly because of just a realization and a new group of people teaching our engineers and scientists and policymakers, we gave something really important away when we sent that small M. It's actually a big M. It's essential for that whole innovation cycle. Let's get this thing back. And then it was single digits for the percentage of companies that were reshoring, but it suddenly just turned into a waterfall. And now most companies were bringing their manufacturing back. And they were bringing it back so they could reassemble that innovation cycle of ideas, see if you can make it, then keep moving around to make it better and making it more effectively. Second reason, part of it's the what, but then part of it is also that innovation cycle as well.
And reshoring is a word you just used. That's a big theme, particularly around manufacturing. It makes even more sense during COVID. Talk about why are companies in this space a little bit, you alluded to it, but give a clear answer. Why are companies coming back to the US in this space?
Thank you. I always like to clarify this point a lot. One is the innovation cycle that I talked about, but there are other reasons too. There are more not current reasons, and they're almost, what are they, perverse. They weren't intended, these actions weren't intended to help with reshoring, but they have. And one is geopolitical instability. There is tremendous geopolitical instability right now because of tweets or because of personalities, politics, and the relationships with countries have really been damaged. And these are partners like Ireland, people who are, quote, friends And with antagonism and threats about tariffs and actual tariffs, that has really made these global relationships unstable. And that geopolitical instability has led to clients coming to me and saying, hey, we can't take on that risk. We're not trying to be political. We're not making any statement at all. We just can't deal with the risk. Let's bring this stuff back and or at least get it closer. I mentioned Belize, the people in Belize were envious of Costa Rica has over 100 medical device companies now because we're nearshoring. We're going, okay, we have bad relations and China's a long ways away and it's unstable there. The relationships are unstable. Things are better with Costa Rica. We'll move it closer to home. And so that's partly, we'll call it nearshoring, but the reshoring has probably happened at a probably significantly higher rate than just going to someplace like Costa Rica. And that's companies saying, hey, we need a dependable supply of active ingredients for our pharmaceutical products, but then we also need dependable places to do our medical device assembly and development. And part of that's the innovation cycle that I talked about, but it's also part of geopolitical instability.
Here it's beautiful. We don't want to leave them out.
I was just in Costa Rica 2 months ago, and what a great place to help medical device companies. I'm all set to go with you, Jared.
This comes up with city after city is how do we get this biomanufacturing here? How do we open up life science companies in here, whether it's Fairfield or Concord or Livermore and Modesto and everybody in between? That all sounds like a good idea, but what are these companies looking for, whether it's a 10-person company doing research in a lab or advanced manufacturing? What are they really looking for as a location to go?
I often answer it with a comparison between information technology versus biomedical, and because there might be hope in information technology and IT instead of biomedical for some of these locations. Let me just run through it. The workforce. Let me take the workforce for example. In tech, it's people with a certain skill set in coding, in information technology, computer science, engineering. With life science, it's specialized technicians, people who are on site managing very complicated processes. It's not remote workforce. It's a workforce that needs to be local and trained deeply in some of these principles and how to use very sophisticated equipment. A workspace for tech is offices and remote and co-working spaces. But for biomedical, it's specialized labs, it's clean rooms, it's GMP facilities. It's a longer term investment. The way I like to see it too is it's often an investment in a community. If one company comes there, builds that type of infrastructure, even if they move, even if they get acquired, those facilities remain as a community resource effectively. Development, it's long-term development, higher capital, it's more regulated versus just low capital and rapid response in tech. The job stability, there's a lot more volatility with tech, a lot more stability and steady production with biomedical. And the impact, yes, tech scales fast, but that long-term high wage physical economy and much better, we'll call it ripple effect or multiplier effect from biomedical. It takes a different skill set. It takes a different physical resource, but it has these added benefits of that. And back to your question about why not everywhere, there often aren't the spaces available. Often isn't the commitment of resources for that long-term investment. And oftentimes, and this is where a place like Fremont shines, there's a group within the Economic Development Department that focuses specifically on how do we help permit a regulated facility more effectively and more efficiently, faster. How do we get the police on board and the fire on board and the emergency protocol people on board to help with regulatory requirements? And it's partly policy people, partly the infrastructure of the city that matters too. Bringing all of those together, probably the three big ones. One is the physical plant and equipment and the infrastructure. It's about power and water and disposal and clean rooms. But it's also a workforce that's trained, and that workforce is trained through community colleges oftentimes, but also the CSUs. as well as having master's and PhD opportunities from the UCs. It's a different type of engagement with the academic community with industry. And then it's also, like I said, the policy part of it as well. And all three of those together, that's what makes a location good for biomedical companies.
They tend to cluster when there's one, they tend to cluster others around it.
Jared, that's a really good point, because there's an added benefit that I didn't talk about, and that's back to my point about hypothesis testing earlier, where you've got companies test a hypothesis, try to go through clinical trials. If it fails, they learn, but the collective economy, the collective industry learns, and they move on with a new company who has a different hypothesis. And oftentimes the people move from location to location. And so there's less of this sense of, oh, I lost my job, there's nowhere else to go. Imagine you work for Lilly in Indianapolis and you're like, oh, wow, now what do I do? Guess I call U-Haul. Here, you don't even have to change your parking spot. You just go and work for another company in one of the buildings nearby. There's this robust cluster. Clearly, the most significant one is South San Francisco. Our database right now shows over 300 biopharma companies. And so you lose your job at Roche, you go and get a job over at Lilly or AstraZeneca or Amgen or somebody very close by. J&J is right there. They're literally all within walking distance of that place where you park your car or from your commute. And then there's a cluster in the Berkeley, Emeryville area, similar robust situation where companies are trying out new things. And if that doesn't work out, you join a new company or new group within another company. And the clustering actually is a really, really important benefit. And here's the interesting thing too. And I mentioned one of my collaborators through all of this, through the past 14 years, has been Stephen Bader with the East Bay EDA. And what we've noticed, we've been tracking these locations, and there was this hypothesis that it was like dropping some ink on a piece of paper and it would spread out over time. What we've seen with our data is that the industry has gotten more and more concentrated. South San Francisco has more companies, it is more concentrated. Emeryville, Berkeley, doubled the number of companies in the 14 years we've been keeping track. Fremont, again, another cluster of expertise and hypothesis testing. The clustering is important in this too, because people circulate, ideas circulate, infrastructure and supply networks are nearby too. And it's really hard to break into that cool kid group.
What is the impact of power, PG&E, clean water, and even data center proximity to, how does this matter to attracting these companies?
I think what's more important though, Jared, is how the city staff help you navigate variances within, whether it's your power needs or whether it's your water needs, whether it's your disposal needs. It's less about, can I get power, water, and disposal, and more about how efficient can I get help, or how much more efficient can I be with the help of the city. And again, I like to use Fremont, but Hayward's very strong. City of Berkeley's very strong at getting things done very quickly and efficiently. But I think part of the feedback I get from companies is they've chosen location for one of many reasons, but one of them is the outstanding staff of the city. And the ones that come up most are Fremont, Hayward, and Berkeley.
I've heard that about Vacaville too, is that they've created a cluster in this space very well. What are the trends in this? We talked about increase in manufacturing, how AI is doing. Talk to me about other trends that are impacting this field that are exciting, that are innovating. What are you seeing?
Well, let me touch on AI first. I think we've gone from pilot to standard very rapidly. A use case often implies a pilot and just seeing if it can work. We've gone beyond that. And let me touch on a few of the areas that we've gone by. One is obviously generative AI for molecular design and drug discovery. It used to be, hey, let's take the data and try to be more efficient. We're doing the opposite now. We're actually saying, what drug characteristics do we need? How can we design something? And it's changed the way we develop new drugs. That's phenomenal. And that's obviously boosted the AI industry nearby, but it will continue to make the biopharma industry in the Bay Area, the biopharma segment of the biomedical industry in the Bay Area, strong and leading in the world. That's number one. Number two, and this is really important, particularly from my perspective as a manufacturing engineer, and that is we're using AI to be better at predictive maintenance and quality control. With data, and I'll give you a simple example. We all drive our car. If we know when it's going to break down, because there's a lot of collective data about when things fail, we can prevent disruptions of driving our car. Same case with manufacturing, whether it's medical device or pharma manufacturing, we're running our systems more efficiently and having a higher level of quality control. If we know what causes dips up and down in a band of quality and we can foresee them, AI helps us identify them early and prevent that. We're better at regulatory and document workflow with AI. Digital twins. I do a lot of work with bioreactors, and if you can develop a digital twin where you can simulate what the reactor will do to see whether it'd be successful or not, and that prevents you from having to go through and clean and set up a real physical bioreactor, and you have to do that less often. That increases efficiency and lowers cost. And then personalized medicine, especially in the medical device space. The idea of making something, and here's the easiest example, let's say a hearing aid, being able to craft a hearing aid that exactly fits your ear. And I think that one of the really interesting parts for me, at least as an engineer, is all of the innovations around the technology, particularly the use of AI. I think that's probably the most exciting for me. Other areas that I think that just everyone will find exciting is the idea of cell and gene therapy, where instead of bombing the system with chemicals, chemotherapy, instead we're trying to say, what's this particular cellular makeup within this person's body? What does it need to be enhanced to overcome a disease or a predisposition? That's exciting to me too, as gene editing is. This person has this genetic makeup and this makeup is causing this defect or this ailment. How can we fix that? How can we patch that? I think that's really exciting.
When you talk about cancer and chemo and how this sector is evolving, right? Because I think a lot of people who talk about wanting this business or don't really know how it's used. And I think that's a good example of, hey, instead of this whole body inject this chemo, how can we isolate certain cells and treat them, is what I'm hearing from you, in a much different way.
It's a real revolution in treatment. And again, philosophically, we've been on board with this for a long time. It wasn't like we suddenly woke up and said, chemotherapy is tough on the body. No, we've known that. We just now have the technologies, the tools to make it work. It's fascinating to see how the advancements in one part of the economy, whether it's robotics or whether it's AI or whether it's sensors, how that influences the advancements in another part of the economy. I focus specifically on Contra Costa and Alameda counties, and looking through a database of about 3,000 companies and looking at what they were making, the services or products they were making, the tremendous overlap between industries. Food and biotech, for example, obviously electronics and software and biomedical in the form of robotics. What's a robot? Does a robot fit into the biomedical industry? It's meant to help with surgery. It's truly a biomedical product, but wait a minute, it relies on sensors and software and electronics, and it's really a combination of all these industries. That gets to the heart of what we talked about earlier from a policy perspective of why we have a much more stable, more resilient economy, because we've got a robust kind of urban, not just an industry cluster, but an urban cluster of different expertise.
For the policymakers, the people who see this as an area of economic growth for the region, how do we, as a region, double down on this sector? How do we attract more companies? How do we help the ones that are here flourish? What are some concrete action steps that the region as a whole should be taking to expand this, to take it on?
I think one way policymakers can be more effective is if they don't have this tunneled vision for one part of the economy. And the obsession with biotech, for example, in a place where it might not be the best location for it. Because of all those things, this location may not be good for that, but it could be a great location for contract manufacturing for medical devices, or it could be an outstanding place for burgeoning AI companies. There are downsides. Like I said, I was comparing and contrasting information technology and tech companies with biotech. And yes, they have different upsides and downsides. Long-term investment cycle for biomedical isn't always positive because you can't raise the money and have investors that are that patient. There's ups and downsides with both. I think from a perspective of an economic development person, you'd want to say, all right, let's figure out what assets we have and let's attract the companies and industries that fit with those resources that we do have. Instead of saying, oh, we have to be biotech. We have to put in lab space. We have to put in this type of robust water and electricity and disposal assets. The location quotients are getting bigger and bigger, and that just simply means there's greater and greater concentration within locations. Let it happen. It's a natural process. Instead, focus on other parts of this robust economy. At least that's what, if you're in the Bay Area, you have that luxury.
I'm involved with a group called Startup Walnut Creek, and we are focused on health tech and sport tech companies. And the goal wasn't to use the medical that's here, right? They have most major medical in Walnut Creek. It is a medical hub. And to take that and attract tech companies in that space. Wearables is a couple of companies we've talked to. Companies that are making body armor for the US military, but are looking to put those into youth sports to reduce injuries on a basketball court and things. And it's a very unique focus of how to attract and partner those companies versus don't go after the lab space. We don't have the land and the building capacity to compete with Livermore on lab space.
Yep, you're onto it. Jared, that's exactly right. That would be my prescription. And because Walnut Creek is in proximity to all of these other activities, it's positioned well. And I left out a really important part about the ecosystem as well earlier, and that's the demand side. We have tremendous healthcare assets here in the form of Kaiser, in the form of Sutter, UCSF, Stanford. And Walnut Creek is well positioned, as you said, to be on the use and trial use of different technologies, especially on the digital side, because you've got great health centers in Walnut Creek. And what I mean by demand side is people who are willing to try out the stuff. There's one thing to have the UCSF and Stanford and be inventing the stuff, but I think equally important to have the other end of it. I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about why manufacturing has been interesting to me, because it acts as a bridge between the two, between the ideas and the uses. And I think there's such an overprivileging of the development of ideas. And I think at the expense of the uses of the ideas, the trialing of the ideas, you need both. Both are essential. It's
Well,
almost
that's one of like the prizes that we're getting through a competition here is that we can't guarantee that you would partner with one of our major medical and they'll pilot it. But what they'll do is they'll enter into a letter of intent with you to say, we will now review this through a formal process to see if we could pilot it. Because if you get Sutter or Kaiser or any of these other big entities to pilot and have a successful pilot of your technology, that is worth more than a $10,000 or $50,000.
yeah. And in fact, in reality, Jared, it'll lead to that investment because venture capitalists understand, and angel investors in particular understand what you just said. They understand that, hey, that trial is super valuable because not only, here's the most important thing, and we learned this from all the folks who talk about lean philosophy to business startup, and that is get into a relationship with customers and potential customers and engage with them and have them give you feedback. Have them co-develop with you. The whole concept of you being a user innovator is huge. And I think that's a real benefit. It's part culture, but it's also part infrastructure with the healthcare providers here in the Bay Area. We've got user innovators. We've got partners who are co-developing things with us. And can't emphasize that enough. It's the use and the feedback about what features are good, which ones could be better. That's essential. And that's the core of lean startup philosophy is get out of the lab and go and engage with people and have them give you feedback and then iterate and iterate.
All right, Gregory, before we head out, any last thoughts or advice out there for the listeners that I haven't asked you yet?
One of the things that really touches me is the strength of belonging. And what I mean by that is knowing that you're part of a larger ecosystem and how you can contribute to it. That's a powerful part about a strong economic development mentality. And my last really important point for me, and I love to really share this, is that embrace the maps that show industries and show the supply networks that support them. And if you're a contract manufacturer in Concord, you're sitting back going, am I lonely up here? Or no, hang on a second. I'm part of a really robust regional ecosystem. If I'm down here in Union City and I make this component, I'm not just somebody that's been, overcome by Amazon and Alibaba, but no, I'm actually an important part of an ecosystem that I can plug into different entities. And there's on East Bay EDA, they've got a great map site that shows different industries, and then you can combine the industries to look at all the intersections between different sectors and really embrace where you are in this larger ecosystem. I think that's a really important point with all of this, is that it takes all of these different nodes, but they all support each other as well.
Gregory Theyel, thank you for being here and talking about this important topic to growth in our region and our economic strength.
I love your questions, Jared, and I love your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to the Capstone Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe and follow Jared Asch and Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Leave us a review and share this episode with a friend.